Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to a quick little, I guess you could say character bio kind of thing. I'm just going to be giving the cliff notes of what makes this character tick, more or less, at least from my perspective. Tactics Ogre is a game that obviously can be read a lot of different ways because there's a lot of implications between relationships and little bits and pieces of what people do here and there. But I specifically wanted to cover this one because, well, there were a good number of comments recently asking, like, hey, what the hell's Catiua's deal? Is she just weirdly written? Is she super inconsistent? Is she just like two-faced to all hell? Is she just lying? What's the deal there? And the answer is a little bit of most of everything but the first option of the above. So please be aware that this is going to contain spoilers. Now, I'm not going to be going scene by scene to analyze every single tiny thing. I'm going to be taking bits and pieces as they come to mind from various situations. If you want to see all of those cutscenes and stuff like that, there's different analyses put together. We got all the cutscenes on Burax's side. We've got all of the various kind of analyses over on Warren Report's side. So this is just going to be more of a, I just want to ramble about what makes this character tick kind of a situation. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. So, first and foremost, as far as Catiua goes, is she somebody that is, like, is she actually honest about who she is through most of the game? No. She's somebody that basically is kind of the embodiment of lying to herself and others. She puts up a lot of fronts from different situations, but her whole deal is that she's always trying to build a safety net for herself in various different situations, and that remains consistent throughout all of it. So, like, her early facade where she acts like everybody's big sister and she's the one kind of keeping everybody together and whatever else, that's because being in that small group after their town's been burned down, that is her safety, that is her network, that is what keeps her going. Everywhere she goes, it's all about keeping herself safe. So, and I don't mean directly like physically safe, I mean like feeling safe in a headspace sort of way. So, like, let's say before the game even started, the three of them have absolutely been through some shit. So when their town burns down, you have to realize that everything infrastructure-wise is completely gone there. They're on an island. They can't exactly go anywhere. And so in that particular situation, it winds up just the three of them scavenging for food in a war-torn place that's got little left, while it's all trying to rebuild. And we see multiple background scenes where, for example, Vyce is bringing back like a rabbit that he found, so now they can eat for a couple of days. You know, just one rabbit, that tiny bit of meat, is supposed to keep them sustained for a few days, and that's a good day. So it's just crazy to think how much they were potentially starving, scavenging, whatever else, but she essentially sees safety in this group. She doesn't necessarily want to go anywhere else, and she really can't go anywhere else. She's kind of tied to the church previously. She was training as a sibyl, she was training as a priest. So this basically means that like, this area is about as good as she can hope to get at the moment. As soon as the plot comes up to go rescue Ronway, she's essentially on board, more or less attempting to revive the little resistance that's kept their little pocket of humanity going. Now, that being said, as soon as they get there, she almost immediately gets cold feet and wants to leave because, again, safety first. However, as soon as it turns out that the Zenobians are kind of on their side, that they're willing to help them, immediate coin flip, hey, hold on, this is actually winnable now. You know, these people, hey, look, these are our best buddies now. You know, she's immediately ready to go use them to their ends. And this scene actually tells you a lot more about the character than it may initially seem, because not only do they directly call her out for the fact that she's willing to use them immediately, but on top of that, we see that Denam is already well aware of who she is as a person. One of the lines that he puts out there, I'm paraphrasing this a little bit, is basically like, you don't like anything that's not the way you see it. So anything that's not within her particular worldview, anything that's kind of out of the norm, that's out of the safety bubble, is just no bueno. So she is just unhappy if there's anything out of the norm, out of safety, as it were. Anyways, so they end up taking the castle, they end up getting their promotion, and now she realizes, hey, look, there's bigger safety here. Now the resistance is safety, and so she's all on board for that. With the one exception being that she starts to run her mouth when they're talking to Tardy later on, basically about to kind of let it slip that they were on the opposite side, that they're still kind of resentful about their town being burned down, and that's fair enough. I mean, if somebody burned down your whole existence, you'd probably be pretty pissed and want to at least bring that up too. So anyways, but again, she feels safe, she feels confident, and from that position of confidence is where she always likes to operate. So even though that potentially gets her into trouble, she knows that she has, the resistance backing her, so worst case scenario, she still has friends. As soon as we get to Belmamusa, though, we again see that as soon as Vyce ends up splintering, as soon as it turns out the resistance isn't safety, what's her immediate response? Well, shoot, back to my backup safety. Here, I need my big safety brother over here. So she immediately latches onto Denam, because, again, undying loyalty, all that kind of thing. Now suddenly he's safety after the resistance ends up kind of betraying them. And even if you end up sticking with them, again, she sees it as a betrayal because they did something unexpected. Unexpected and sneaky is no good. It's not safe. So she ends up, no matter what, sticking with Denam in that particular situation. Even denying it to Vyce when he calls her out for it later, where he's basically saying, hey, look, you totally would have just stuck with him anyway. What the hell are you talking about? No, he never would have done such a terrible thing. Cue alternate timeline with all the genocide. Anyway, so with that said, at that point, we get to around the mid-game, and we see multiple moments, no matter what timeline you're on, that she immediately wants out of that situation. She feels immediately safe in her kind of army surrounding her, but as soon as there's any opportunity to leave, she's immediately on board. Every time that they show up to a port, she immediately goes up to Denam, hey, look, dude, can we leave? We got a boat. Let's just get the hell out of here. And he always turns her down. So she's pissed about it, but again, this is the closest safety available. So, as a result, they end up continuing on. Later on, though, through about chapter 3-ish, I forget exactly where this cutscene plays, but we get that moment where she's again telling him, hey, look, I want to go. I need out of here. This is not safe right now. We keep doing this war stuff, and it's just not really doing it for me. This is not feeling safe right now. So even when they're winning, she's immediately feeling, hey, look, the pendulum can swing the other way at any time. We've seen this happen over and over. We're good now. We can also be good if we're safe somewhere else. We now have resources. We now have means. We now have backing. Can we please use that to just GTFO right now? And again, he turns her down because his whole thing is trying to actually fix the problem. Her whole thing is wanting to feel safe. So as a result, she feels betrayed, because she more or less feels that this war is going to inevitably end badly, and can't convince her main kind of safety pole to just kind of detach from the ground and come with her. So as a result, she doesn't want to throw caution to the wind and just completely go, but she is looking for other options at this point, and that's when Tardy ends up showing up. Says, hey, guess what? We got the primo safety package over here. How would you like to be a queen? You get your own army. Guess what? We're kind of badasses too. We'll be your personal bodyguards. And she's like, oh, shoot, this safety is way better than my previous safety. So immediately she goes and switches sides. And that's kind of one of those interesting things. We see her reaction with Hamilton backs this up. Where early on, she's perfectly willing to use him as a tool. She talks to him respectfully, talks to him as a superior and whatever else. And basically sees him as a colleague as time goes on. But as soon as she switched sides, she is 100% switch sides. Like, she makes no effort to get Hamilton out of there whatsoever. She's completely on board with her current safety. So now she is on board with the Dark Knights. Again, it's not as much of a obvious, not as much of a kind of inconsistent thing when you see that she's always just looking for that feeling of safety, that feeling of comfort, to try to keep herself feeling good, It is selfish, it is two-faced, but she's perfectly willing to use anyone, perfectly willing to switch sides and whatever else, as long as she feels safe in the process. And it is a little sociopathic in that way. But then that's when we get to the sudden kind of attack on the castle there, in which she ends up going to back up her new best buddy. But that's the other thing. She actually can or potentially cannot show up to that fight depending on reputation. Now, I don't know if it's her chickening out or if Tardy heard the rumors and told her not to show up, but there's a conversation earlier on, and this kind of implies that you have spies in your ranks, actually. But you're talking to Maruvra, and he asks, hey, look, so your sister's clearly on board with, like, killing you if it means that she feels better, so like, are you going to do what needs to be done here, or, like, do I have to find somebody else to do the job? And if you say that you're perfectly willing to do whatever you need to resolve the conflict, she doesn't show up, for, again, her own safety. If you say that you can't really do anything, then she just more or less calls your bluff and does show up for that fight. After it ends, though, she has a complete mental breakdown because her main benefactor, the one keeping her safe, is now gone. The previous person that she betrayed that was supposed to keep her safe, she now sees as like having killed the one source of safety that she had, so now there is zero safety on the table. She just has a complete meltdown. She's talking about how she doesn't know who she can trust, but that's kind of BS. She knows who she can trust, but at the same time, she just sort of feels betrayed by anybody there. There is no safety to be found, which is why the only reason that she actually ends up joining you is if you more or less like convince her that, hey, you're perfectly welcome back here. We've been buddies the whole time. Bygones are bygones, all that kind of thing. If there's any animosity whatsoever, she would rather die than not feel safe, as bizarre as that is. But again, she needs to feel that safety bubble. That's what I mean of like she's physically willing to risk herself in a lot of situations, but mentally speaking, that thought of being like in an unsafe situation doesn't sit right with her. And I personally, the way that I read this is that it goes back to all the trauma from before the game, where they're scavenging, they're afraid of people all the time. That fear, she's kind of afraid of that fear from the very start. So either way, that's how I personally read that situation. But part of the backup for all of this is actually in the post game. So, of the many different outcomes that can happen, usually it's just good endings when she's managed to survive in the timeline. However, one of the things that can end up happening is that if she ends up ruling, that's the one time that she's willing to just completely let Denam go. She's finally willing to let go of her safety blanket, so to speak, because now she has her own army. And it's really not about Denam in particular, it's, again, that feeling of safety. Vyce offers to be her bodyguard, and she's seen what he's done in other timelines, and refuses to let him stay. She kicks him out. And when we go to the post game, even when they've kind of made up and presumably become friends or whatever else, she still doesn't seem to trust Vyce, who tries to hit on her and gets shut down immediately, harder than anyone else in the game. It's like, oh, hey, guess what? I heard you may be starting a family. No, just no. So when we go to the post-game, though, we get even more revelations about the main three, where we see Denam essentially trying to get closure for everything that happened. He just wanted to go say hi to his dad. We see Vyce reassessing the whole situation strategically, thinking about, how they could have potentially noticed some details here and there, how obvious it all was from the very beginning of what could have happened, and more or less seeing that his dad somewhat died heroically, even if completely drunk. So he doesn't really forgive the guy, which fair enough. I grew up with alcoholic parents too. I get it, man. But it doesn't completely forgive him, but has a little bit more respect for the guy. But ultimately, when we see Catiua's whole deal, like her immediate thing is just starting to have a mental breakdown upon seeing that whole situation, being repeatedly reminded of what they're doing there in the first place, which is presumably to get closure for everything that happened. And eventually, getting to go see her dad off, or her adopted dad off, even though she doesn't seem too concerned about the guy in the end there. Again, she seems more worried about the situation itself, worried about herself, worried about her station. She mentions the promotions that she's gotten along the way multiple times, about seeing kind of where she's come herself. She's fully focused on herself, not the situation. So, again, the way that I read the whole situation is that she is consistently written to be selfish, to be two-faced, but always pursuing that mental safety net, as it were, rather than anything along the lines of being loyal to particular people. She is loyal to herself and that feeling of safety, if that makes sense. But yeah, for anyone that's been through traumatic stuff in the past, I'm sure y'all have had at least pangs of that sort of thing before, and in her particular case, it's just sort of like really embedded in there, Anyways, very interesting perspective though, as far as the character goes. It's something you don't necessarily see explored that often, as far as somebody's need for safety after they've been through stuff. So, anyway, I hope this helps. I hope this was interesting, and yeah, y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care, and see you in the next one. If for some reason y'all want more of these, I guess I could. Just yeah, this is the one that kind of comes up the most consistently. All right, take care.